Hello, I'm Grimlyn, and today I want to begin sharing with you the contents of my grimoire. For decades, nay, centuries, okay, it's just decades, I've been playing tabletop role playing games. That's a lot of experience to draw from, but I guess if we're going to begin anywhere, we should begin, well, at the beginning. It would be 28 years ago, give or take the mists of time, when I got my first tabletop role playing game books. You see, my father taught a martial arts school, and one of his students one day brought in this big chest of books. He learned that I was getting into fantasy video games and role playing games and thought that I'd be interested in, the source of where it came from, role playing games. The chest was full of the blue and red and purple D&D BCMI books, the Basic Expert Companion Master. I didn't have the Immortal set, um, but it was the full set of those books. One of the first edition AD&D player handbooks, and a smattering of second edition AD&D adventure books, as well as the campaign box for Spelljammer. And that's the important part we'll get back to here in a moment. So at first, I was playing with just the BCMI books and really just the basic book, the basic and the expert book, because that included the outdoor adventure portion. And it was fun. I was really into it. I ran adventures for my brothers and some of the kids in my dad's martial art class, as well as eventually school. And it was neat. I was hooked as somebody who was already playing uh Dragon Warrior, well, what they call Dragon Quest nowadays, but at the time they called it Dragon Warrior. Um and Final Fantasy, like the original Final Fantasy, I was really into it. In fact, I like the red mages in Final Fantasy because they're the swordsman mages, kind of like elves are in BCMI, where elves could do a little bit of, they were like a fighter mage. So anytime you see me doing a red mage, it's because of classic BCMI D&D. But eventually, I wanted more. I was always more of a science fiction fan and a space fantasy fan, and well, there was that box of Spelljammer there that was just sitting there, and it looked really cool. You had fantasy boats flying through fantasy space, swashbuckling adventures, all this kind of stuff. You may notice that there is a problem that came up with this, and that is I had the BCMI books and the first edition AD&D, but I didn't have anything of second edition AD&D. And when I was reading the Spelljammer book, it would talk about AD&D, and I would look into the first edition AD&D book and try to figure out what it was referring to, all the little things that were working, I had the monster. You might have seen that binder on my bookshelf and some of the pictures, and I'll probably put up some fancy picture. I had the monster binder that I got that as part of the collection of AD&D monsters. So I had all these things referring to Thaco um and AC and all the stuff that worked with second edition AD&D. But I had the only thing that I had rules wise was first edition D&D stuff. So I kind of cobbled together the rules and filled in the blanks of the things I didn't understand because I didn't know that there was a whole new version of Dungeons and Dragons that I didn't have the books for because I believe that this was this gentleman's extra stuff. I think there was just things that he had a surplus of and things that he wasn't really interested in because when I was really excited about Spelljammer, he was like, "Yeah, we don't really play that. We're more into the Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance." And I was like, but there's spaceships. You can be an elf on a spaceship swinging a sword. How is that not exciting? Um, But I did it. I patched together like a first edition AD&D hybrid that I played, and that was my first real, I would say, campaign experience was running this weird amalgamation of D&D. And it's funny because there would be a period of time afterwards when I started going into Palladium and D&D third edition and stuff like that, that I would be um, I would be more accurate and to the letter of the rules. But young preteen Gremlin was very much I'm just going to make it up as I go along and hope for the best. And it would take me many years to understand what really worked very well for preteen Gremlin works very well nowadays in the games that I run. But yeah, that would be my humble origin stories is my desire to go to space and cast magic missile at alien mind flayers. So that is my first little story here of Dungeons and Dragons, how I got into it. We'll follow up with more tales and thoughts about tabletop role playing as we go along. I just felt that this would be a kind of fun way to start is discussing my love of Spelljammers. It's why anytime the joke comes up, Spelljammer announced for 5th edition, I have to jump on that and be as serious as possible. Well, thank you for listening, and I'm Gremlin. These are stories from my grimoire, and I hope that you all have a very lovely day.